and welcome to the first episode of eTalks in 2024. We are eTalks, our culture science discussions, where every week we have a wonderful guest that speak about their expertise in the art, culture, and science fields. Today, we have a wonderful guest. She is the youngest speaker on our show. She is a student, she is a chef, she has her own website, she is active on our social media. She's a foodie. Her name is Hanieh Kachooee, and Hanieh, welcome.
Thank you so much for that, Zainab. Hello to our lovely listeners. I'm Hanieh, and I was originally born in Iran. My family moved when I was around 5, so I was actually raised with a lot of different cultures, and it was through traveling that I got to meet people from all walks of life and become acquainted with their culture when it comes to cooking and their cuisine. So that's actually the reason why I love traveling so much right now as an adult. It's, getting the chance to experience different cuisines and more importantly, the people who prepare the food. So their stories, they kind of give these stories throughout a plate. So that's a little bit about my background. And as you mentioned, Zainab, yes, I'm a student, sadly. No, I'm joking. But I am an IT student. But my real passion starts when I get home and I come in this little kitchen. As you can see, this is like my little test kitchen. And I start playing around with my pots and pans like a little kid and make a big mess. But that's when I'm the happiest. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I love food. So
That's
that
awesome.
wraps it
When you
up.
just said like pots and pans, like a little kitchen, I just remember that when I was little, so I was born and raised in Turkey, and I remember being in my backyard of the apartments and having like a little bit of dirt and mixing that with water and making like, mud food, and then, having some
Yeah.
leaves as the ingredients. So I
Oh my
guess this
God,
cooking,
yes.
it's like such a I would say like a survival intuition that we have. So what are we going to talk about today? I see you in your apron, so this is a totally new format. Can you explain a little bit of what we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So, while we kind of discuss food, that's the central theme tonight. My favorite topic to discuss. So, food, and more importantly, preserving our cultural heritage through food. But while we do all that discussion, I'm also going to be preparing my what I call ride or die meal. Like it's what I resort to after a long, exhausting day. Like I don't have the energy to get up. I just want to melt into my bed, but I know my body needs something. So this is it. It's a messy tofu scramble bowl with a lot of like, bold flavors. I feel like tofu gets a really bad rep. I don't know what they have done to tofu, but it has some like serious haters. I'm here to debunk that because I love tofu. I love the texture, and we're gonna add so many flavors. The ingredients that I will be using, if you don't have them, you should have them. They're pantry staples. Everyone should have them in their house. We're using minimal ingredients. You probably have the rest lying around in your kitchen. And again, if you don't, then you should. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be cooking today. Spicy, hot, crunchy, lots of texture. It's going to be good. You're going to love it.
That is awesome. So I just want to get out what I think about, when you just said preserving cultural identity through food. So food is very, I would say, temporary. So
That's
when you
true.
cook something, it's gone for me in a couple of seconds or in a matter of minutes because I
You
eat
gobble it
it.
down.
Yeah, I consume it. So when I think about cultural heritage, I usually think about, you know, artworks or some sites that might have been passed down for generations. Some, I think about archaeology. I think about like bowls and pans, like ceramics from like thousands of years
Hmm.
ago. So I think about cultural customs when I think about like those heritage things, but I think about things that are very concrete and solid. So, well, some cultural, practices that are not very concrete, but when you just said food, it's one of the things that is very temporary and that's very malleable. So how are we, able to pass down our cultural heritage through food?
That's actually such a good question. I do want to start with the fact that our generation and our parents' generation, unfortunately, by the way, don't mind me. I'm kind of going to be also doing my own thing, but we are kind of losing our touch in the kitchen. So I feel as though the more we advanced, the more we became technical. You know, we entered the computer era, the information era. We try to be productive, you know, have these like heavy routines, you know, up and rise and grind. That's great and all, but we've kind of lost touch with something that's so essential. So like you said, it's it's very rooted in like survival. And I don't think it would be a good thing to lose touch with that. So the first thing is that even if you could care less about your culture, you should still put that time for yourself to just cook yourself a simple meal. Fry an egg, for God's sake, like on toast. Just eat that. I'm telling you, it's so essential. Like if you compare yourself for like from when you have a good meal versus when you don't and you like order takeout, or sometimes takeout is a good idea, but I'm talking about most of the time. I'm talking about routine. Like it's so essential. It's paramount not only to like your physical health, but also your mental health. It's self-care. And you know, at the end of the day, you are what you eat. And what better way to monitor that than to make it yourself? And I always say this, people have this like idea of cooking how it's like a talent. Like, oh wow, you're just so good in the kitchen. Wow, you made this brownie from scratch, or wow, you did this. But really what it is, it's like playing the piano, you know, all it takes is practice. So that's one thing. And then when it comes to the like deeper meaning, you know, the underlying meaning, it really is like oral history. You know, you preserving your cultural identity through food is such a strong feeling for you, because at the end of the day, no matter where you go, you're always going to belong to the homeland that you left, even if you immigrate. So, I immigrated pretty young and I did not grow up with my relatives. They visited every now and then, but it was like minuscule in my lifetime. The only way that I could really connect with my aunts and like my, well, not uncles, because, you know, Middle Eastern house, usually aunts cook. The only way we could really connect was through food. We had no other like topic to discuss really. Like what books, so the books they would read, I wouldn't have an idea. I couldn't read Farsi at the time. The movies they would watch, they were probably like tacky to me. The movies I would watch were, you know, tacky for them. So it was all about food. It was all about food. I got a chance to even connect with people from a completely different background than mine through food, and people from my culture. And so that's why I really think food is a really great medium for, you know, preserving that part of yourself.
Also, I was
It's a
gonna
piece of
say like
home. Yeah.
it's definitely a piece of home. And regarding cultural heritage, I think food is very connective to other factors such as geography and people's demographics as well. So just like some couple things that I can think of is each region in the world has their own plants that are growing there, like the animals, different sources. I can think about like the fish, especially in East Asia, or like the
Oh
rice
yeah.
growing. I think about like the history class when I learned that the early civilizations in China, one of the reasons for their survival, their successful growth of their civilization was through rice. I think about like Japan, and because they were in such a like a very small land with lots of like mountainous area, that they didn't have enough place for like farming. And so they, because of fishing, that's how their civilization, I would say, boomed in a way. And right now, those kind of factors such as geography and the other things, those are culture as well. So those are passed down through food as well. So I can think that food, really encompasses a lot of things that is connected to our culture.
That's such a brilliant point. Also talking about geography, side note, I did a little mini food tour in Turkey with my friends. It was like we did 3 cities in 3 days. We were young and crazy. Thank God one of them was a responsible adult, but we were in the West. So we went to, okay, a little side story. I became obsessed with Izmir bombs when I first went to Turkey. Like obsessed. Like they were an enigma to me. I was like, how did they It's so simple, yet it's so
Can you explain
magnificent.
for our viewers who don't know what Izmir bomb is, just
I
so like the
can't even
name
I
wouldn't
can't even
confuse
believe
people?
I have to explain this. Like, how is this not the first thing you learn? But an Izmir bomb is basically dough that is stuffed, and I mean stuffed with chocolate hazelnut spread, like something like Nutella, but better than Nutella. Everyone tells me it's Nutella. I know it's not Nutella. That well, what's the word for uncle in Turkish? What do you
Amca?
Amjad, yeah, he was lying to me. He was saying that like kızım, we just put Nutella in this. I know it's not Nutella, but anyway, so it's stuffed with like loads of chocolate, just like an probably illegal amount of chocolate. And yeah, so when you bite into it, it's like this soft dough, and it just falls apart with all the chocolate gushing out.
So we use in the beginning, you mentioned that cooking is not a talent, but it is a skill.
That's
So
true.
can you talk more about that? You know, and when you said that, the first thing that came up to my mind is in order to make art, you don't need a talent, but you know, if you can build that skill, whether it be drawing or learning an instrument, you don't need to be born with, you know, knowing how to play the piano, which some people do, and they're, you know,
Lucky
we
them.
call them, you know, naturally born talented people. But for most of us, most of people like me, we need to build that skill. Can you consider, you know, can you talk more about talent versus skill in cooking? And do you consider cooking as art?
Wow. Wow, wow. That definitely ignites something in my mind. So, your first question is actually a very, very good question, because my cooking journey, really was just about the fact that I needed something to eat. So I became vegetarian, and there wasn't a lot of options for me. So it was really just about getting in the kitchen and making foods that I missed, you know, foods that were passed down to me, and recipes that I loved, like my childhood comfort foods. I was missing them. And I don't know if you enjoy like vegetarian options at restaurants. I usually don't. They're usually very lazy and just something put together. But it would be better if they just don't have anything, to be honest. I digress. Anyway, so yeah, I was like, I need to learn how to do this. And my cooking at the start was so bad that I remember once my dad was like, Hanieh, you don't need to like, just don't, just you don't need to do this, just don't, like someone else can cook. And it was like genuinely that bad. But it's like a skill. It's like playing the violin, and when you first do it, it's like you know what I'm talking about, like that irritating noise that just you want to, you know, pluck your ears off. It was that, but in cooking form. And then eventually it's just practice. It really, really is practice. And especially now with the internet, you can learn literally anything. So I would watch videos days on end, just videos, just consume, and then implement. And the reason why I say like it's very, very essential to hone the skill of yours, because you got to cook, whether you like it or not, you got to cook. But you hone it because you want to enjoy being in the kitchen. It really shouldn't feel like a chore. It's such a sensory thing to me, like the smell, the texture, the fire, like it ignites something in you. So learning how to enjoy it. And I think one reason why a lot of people don't really enjoy it is because it's kind of like a chore to them, and they're not being intuitive with it. So if you make it the way you like it, you're going to enjoy being there, you know, just like how we have something called being street smart, right? Like pick up cues when you're walking down the street. It's the same with cooking. Taste it as you go, season it as you go. Learn how to use a knife, for God's sake. If I tell you the amount of people I've seen that just like chop right like this, like, oh my God, it's that's another topic that I will do with you guys. But you know, you just got to get down there, face your fears, just cook, just get messy, you know, and you really do get better as you go. Like I'm sharing recipes online now. Like that's like where you'll get. And actually me sharing recipes did come from the fact that, again, it's kind of related to cultural heritage. It was very much my friends asking me to, so I grew up with people from all over the world, and Persian food was definitely like something weird for them and they wanted to learn more. So me sharing recipes was really like my silly little page. It was just a way for me to share recipes with them. And then I started getting like messages from strangers telling me how much they liked the food. And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. Like, who are you? Do I know you in person? It's a very gratifying feeling. My number one tip tonight would be just to cook something and then share it with someone else. Share the recipe. If you liked it, even if it wasn't your own work, just share it with someone else. It's a beautiful feeling, I tell you.
You mentioned that it's a very you love that sensory while
Yes.
cooking. And I just remembered that Harvard Gazette has actually published an article, a writing that says that mentions that smell is actually the strongest link to memory compared to other four senses. So when we're talking about, reminding us our cultural heritage, preserving it, I
Wow.
think about, when I smell something very distinctive about, from a food that I know belongs to maybe like a Chinese culture, or from like a, Persian culture, or like a Turkish culture, or I know it just,
Wow.
reminds me of all the other elements that may belong to that culture. So I think, I'm just going to take this to another level and say the third culture kids who are watching us, what is a third culture kid? It's a child who grows up in a different cultural environment from their parents. So I'm a third
Mhm.
culture kid. My parents are Turkish, but I was raised in Turkey up until a certain point where most of my
Mhm.
childhood was in the United States.
Mhm.
So when I smell something that reminds me of like a Turkish food, it really reminds me of my
Wow.
culture. So I think, it's a crucial part of the connection between you and your culture. Also, side note, all the kids that have been bullied for their smelly lunches in middle school, in high school, I want to say that, you know, I am so sorry what happened to you, but I think that smell is very important in order to have that connection because that's the strongest link to your memory about your own culture. Also, a question we have from our audience. How can we use food as a bridge between people and, maybe even countries in this chaotic world is how they worded it. So how can we, use food as like a connective, uniting factor?
First of all, whoever asked that question, I don't know who you are, but I really appreciate you because I really wanted to bring up the fact that for me, this is just my personal opinion, but I think it applies. Food is a great way to fight off xenophobia. Like you mentioned, kids getting bullied at cafeterias because their food smells different or looks different is a sign of xenophobia. It's a sign of fearing what you don't know, fearing the foreign. So you're like, oh God, that's gross. And you make someone feel insecure. But now think of New York, where I think it's, the capital, the food capital of the world, in my opinion. It's just so many different hubs of different cultures. And what it has done, actually, it has created a community of very open minded people to immigrants, where immigrants, thrive. Immigrants, I know there's hardship, there's always going to be hardship, but people's idea of immigrants, they don't have this hostility towards it. And the dichotomy isn't as intense as it would be somewhere where the variety of food was more limited. So I think food definitely plays a very vital role in kind of lessening this like divide between people, kind of intertwining our cultures. For example, say my culture and your culture. I'm sure there's been fights. I'm a terrible history student. I don't know. But now a lot of people like myself, after living in Turkey for a while, I love merging Turkish and Persian cuisine. That's like my thing to do. I don't really categorize it, okay, I'm cooking Persian food. Okay, no, now I'm cooking Turkish food. It's a part of me now. So I went to your country, I picked up pieces that I loved, and I'm incorporating that in my everyday routine. And it's the same thing with any culture. So now you see a lot of, say, white people eating Indian food and loving it and knowing every dish, every Chinese dish on the menu. So that's what food does. It really
And
like,
that's cultural appreciation. I
There you go.
remember back in a couple years ago with when the during the COVID times with the anti-Asian hate protest, I remember the
Yeah.
slogan, "Love us like you love our food."
Oh my
So
God, that's
it's
so smart.
I found that very powerful because it's if you're appreciating,
Right, Victor? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was thinking this is going to be rotten to the core. It's bright green for all my. This is an avocado for all the listeners. The excitement's over an avocado. Please continue, Zainab. I'm being rude. I'm being rude, guys. Please
it's
continue.
all right, no problem. I was going to say that that slogan, "Love us like how you like our food," is I found that very powerful because we gotta appreciate the culture behind what we
Yeah.
eat, or how we if you're trying to incorporate any elements from a different culture instead of appropriation. I'm kind of against whole like the fast food chain of
Oh,
specific
tell me about it.
cuisines, like the Mexican cuisine, the Asian cuisine, the Indian
Right.
cuisine. So again, the cultural appreciation part is a huge. Also, I want to read one note from our listeners, and I'm going to ask the same question again. So, one comment is not only the process of making food, however, the process and ritual of eating well prepared food or food that has been made with love and generosity has been showing as a metaphor for union in books, movies, and even very famous art pieces. I'm going to say that I
That's
remember
so
like
true.
lots of like TV shows and films. Usually the happily ever after scene ends with a bunch of people around the dinner table.
Oh my God, that's
I
so
don't know,
true. How did you notice that? Oh my God.
like the final
That's so
episodes, if it's like a
true.
happily ever after, it's either a wedding or it's
Yes.
either, ending around a dinner table.
Whining and dining. Exactly. Wow.
So one thing we said that it could be a bridge between people and the universal aspect of appreciating somebody's culture through food. And I thought that I should ask, art is also universal. Do you consider cooking as art?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. I digress so much. I was thinking about this question. I forgot to answer it. But absolutely, with zero hesitation. Why? Mainly because that's how I express myself. So art is really just a form of expression, how you're feeling, whether you're in need of comfort, whether you want to cause distress. I think food is, don't get me wrong, but I think food is an even better medium for expressing yourself because it's more sensory. Art is visual. You can have like, textures here and there. But with food, you got noise, you got scent, you got so much going on. It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. You can layer and layer textures, colors. You eat with your eyes first, of course. So presentation, filling. There's just so much complexity, yet simplicity when it comes to food. It's beautiful. It's my favorite form of art. And I think it's, you know, a lot of people's favorite form of art and a way they express themselves, even if they don't know it. It's gorgeous.
So
Food is
aside from
gorgeous.
music, I think, food is definitely my favorite type of art to consume. So I was gonna
Oh,
say,
that's so smart. Aside from music.
when we
Yeah.
said art, I usually think about like expensive, art pieces, like expensive paintings and etc. Does cooking need to be expensive? Do we need like, saffron in our every single of our meals? Do we need like expensive ingredients? As like a broke college student myself, do I need expensive ingredients to make good food?
I was just talking about this the other day because I recently heard this thing going around. I could be saying it wrong, but it's like cost to calorie ratio or something like this. I heard this kid on the bus on my way back home talking about it, how he was like, things are getting rough. He really needs to save up. So he goes to the vending machine and he sees which food has the highest calorie and then divides it by the price to get the ratio of, cost like per calorie, something like that. And it absolutely blew my mind because I was like, my God, if you buy a bag of beans and rice, it's way less money. I think, I don't want to call our generation lazy, but I will say that we neglect a lot of fundamental things in order to thrive in different aspects of our lives. Like if you, so there's this concept of meal prepping. It's been around forever. Just prepare your meals in advance, or batch prepping or batch cooking. There's many terms for it now. You can definitely keep it low, like keep the cost low and get a satiating, nurturing meal. You mentioned you're from Turkey. That area, like the Mediterranean, actually, I don't want to limit it to that area either, because now I'm thinking Mexico, Latin America, beans and rice. It's such a staple in many homes, and you got your protein, you got your iron, you got your vitamins, and the rice, you got your filling like carb in there, get the brain working. So it definitely doesn't need to be expensive. And speaking about pantry staples, in order to make it less bland or boring, I never understood why people would say like beans and rice is so boring and bland, because we season the hell out of that. I don't know how other people do it, but for me, it's usually like way too flavorful. If I could give like one tip for keeping costs low, first of all, go to places where they sell fresh produce. Usually the farmers market, they got really good deals for fresh produce. If you can't put in the time to do fresh produce, that's fine. The freezer aisle, godsend. Godsend. You got your spinach, you got your peas, you got your carrots. You could do so much. And I don't know why there's this misconception that like frozen food is like bad for you. Whereas I read somewhere that because they like flash freeze it, like they freeze it right away, it actually preserves the vitamins in it even better. So like frozen spinach is actually maybe even healthier than leafy spinach. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a scientist. I'm just saying I read this somewhere. So don't neglect, the frozen aisle. Get yourself bags of veggies, pantry staples like beans, lentils, rice. These are so good for you. And then, honey, stock up on seasoning. I swear to God, I can't tell you the amount of times I went to people's houses and there was like zero seasoning. Just, it's really simple. If I had to do, I'll do three, but then plus a bonus one. Definitely, this is for everyone. Everyone and their mom loves this. Smoked paprika. Get it, love it, learn to use it. You'll appreciate me later. Something with like my culture that we use in literally everything, like spaghetti, bro. We put this in spaghetti water. This is turmeric, and we use it for, again, everything. Like it's a challenge game to try to come up with something that we don't put this in. Turmeric, and again, listeners and viewers could do their own research, but turmeric is like one of the most popular anti-inflammatory ingredients. And side note, it gets activated with black pepper. So these three, and these are actually the seasonings in this food. The bonus one that I really recommend is cumin, because it's great for digestion and it adds incredible flavor. But look at this color. I don't know if you can see. This is our tofu scramble, but she's gorgeous. This is without any like chili oil. One comment I get about my food is like, where does that color come from? Why is it like red? Why is it yellow? Seasoning. It's just that simple. Season your food. And going off of this, Zainab, if you don't mind, I do want to kind of branch into the knowledge, because I just thought about me.
I was gonna say, since the beginning, we're saying cooking is good for you, you're what you eat, and so you should be mindful of it. I was gonna say, how is cooking good for you? How is cooking good for me, instead of just buying off of somewhere? What can I do to,
Fair question.
make very nutritious food and have the control of it? So what are some tips and tricks, and what are some knowledge that is behind it?
So, that's such a good question. I wanted to mention how it just came to me how I know how to pair these two together, why they go hand in hand. And I realized that it comes from like more than 2000 years worth of knowledge. So, we kind of talked about how culture is very well preserved through food, and how resilient it is, because times have changed, ingredients have changed, but it has survived like till now. That's insane to me on its own. But more so also the knowledge. So your grandparents, your great grandparents, or even like the older generations, they know stuff about food, and they pass this knowledge to you through giving you their recipes. One thing about my culture, which I'm really passionate about, is Persian medicine. What I didn't know growing up is that so many different cultures have their own version of this. So Chinese medicine, even Greek medicine. There's also this Hindu concept. I know it's called knowledge of life. The name was Ayurveda. I'm messing up the pronunciation probably, but it just translates to knowledge of life. So we all believe in this concept in Chinese medicine or Greek medicine. We all believe in this concept of foods having a nature when it comes to their temperature. It's a little complex, but I'll get into it. Basically, so anything that I'm using, so I'm using chili right now, or I have avocado in front of me, or garlic. So we believe that besides the temperature, so actually heating this up or putting it in the fridge, the food has a natural quality. So, for example, we say that cucumbers tend to be cold tempered. That means when you eat it, the biomechanics, the way it reacts with your metabolism, it cools the body, it gets rid of toxins. But too much of it, because our body is very warm, so too much of it, too much cooling can actually lead to bowel irritation, brain fog, not being able to focus, anemia even. So that's for cool tempered food. And then warm tempered foods like dates, ripe bananas, sesames, nuts, they're warm tempered and they help blood flow. They help bring your metabolism rate up. And this knowledge by itself, most people in Iran know about this, and most Chinese people also know about this if they're into Chinese medicine. This actually, I did zero research about this growing up. It was just something I heard my parents saying. I would be like, "Oh, mom, I have a stomach ache," and she would be like, "Oh, drink this tea," and in the tea would be ginger, honey, just warm natured food. That's like so real to me. I did a little, growing up, you get curious about your upbringing. I did a little research. So there was this Iranian scientist, like world famous Avicenna. We call him Ibn Sina. I think he wrote Book of Canon, or that's a rough translation of the book. This book is like ancient. It's like more than 2,000 years old, and he talked about this. It's crazy to me that, like, say someone in a rural village in Iran who can't even read knows this knowledge, like knows about this, and tells their kid, "Hey, you probably had too many spring fruits like berries and stuff, which are cold tempered in nature. You should have this tea." How does she know that? It's all through that like oral history, that food channel being used as a way to pass knowledge, and just such crucial knowledge. We should be able to know how to treat ourselves without medicine when it comes to a bellyache. So that's such a good question. I think being smart with food, saving, meal prepping, we all have busy schedules. We're all either full-time students, part-time workers, full-time students. I know the whole nine yards. So given that, meal prep, really put time for this. Wake up earlier. Maybe if you wake up a little earlier, you can make more time for yourself. Stuff like this, you really got to do it. And then that paired with this like rich knowledge is just like, bam, bam, you're a superstar. Like you got both, you're good to go. Your parents don't have to worry about you. You don't have to worry about you. And the beautiful thing is that you pass this on to the next generation, whether it's your kids, your sister's kids, some random stranger's kid, it doesn't matter. I just passed some random piece of knowledge to our viewers right now. It's so precious. It's really, really precious. And we got to learn to value it more, in my
And it helps
opinion.
people to be mindful of, what they're eating and what they will be cooking. All right, so we want to thank you for such a great episode. I think I learned a lot. I believe our viewers learned a lot as well. It was a wonderful conversation. As for the ending of each episode, we want to ask you our eTalk special questions. While you struggle, I want you to struggle even more by asking you, what is your favorite color?
I don't want to hurt any of the other colors' feelings, but red. I love the energy that red gives you.
That's
Red
very warm
food.
temperatured. Okay, that's
Yes,
cool.
exactly.
All right, I'm applying my knowledge. And then going off next question, what is your favorite three books that you would like to recommend to our viewers?
Oh my God. Do not limit me to three. Wow.
Go
I was
ahead.
not ready for this question. So, okay, I will start with the book I'm reading now and the book that inspired me reading this book. Everyone needs to read Educated by Tara Weaver. I believe that's her last name. It's a great book. So nonfiction, and it's about how she was raised in this Mormon family, very weird family, and she ended up like she never got a formal education. She was working in like junkyards. Basically, she was set up for failure from the get-go. She ends up going to Oxford, gets a scholarship from Harvard. She's incredible, and it's crazy to me that she's a real person who's experienced this. It very much focuses on like unorthodox parenting, and that really inspired me to read my second recommendation, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Again, very much about how a lot of kids are raised when they don't live in big metropolitan areas, and we kind of neglect them. So parents get to do whatever they want. And again, unorthodox parenting, it's a weird obsession of mine at the moment. But again, also nonfiction, blows your mind. I don't even know how this kid survived, bro. Like it's intense. Um, so that one, Educated, and The Glass Castle. And finally, a book that I really like. I read it a while ago, but I really like the narration of this book. It's called Frida, after Frida Kahlo, but it's a novel, so it's not nonfiction. It's not, an accurate biography. And it's by this author, Barbara Mujica. It's very indie. Not many people know about her, but I think we can put the name down below, right? Barbara Mujica or something. Great narration. You got to stop me here, or else I'll continue talking about this book for a good 15 minutes. So,
All right. Our third question will be three movies that you would like to recommend.
oh my God, I didn't even
Or
think about
TV shows,
movies.
up to you.
Okay, I appreciate that leeway. So I will start with my favorite movie of all time, Howl's Moving Castle. Everyone should watch it. Howl's Moving Castle. Have you watched it?
Not yet. Not yet.
I appreciate you saying yet. That means there's hope.
Yes.
Watch it. It's amazing. It's like one of those dreams you have when you're a kid. I love it. Howl's Moving Castle. And then let me really think about this. Oh, you know what? This is cute. About Time. I can't believe I can't be caught recommending this movie. Never mind. I take it back. Eat, Pray, Love. Okay, I'm just saying this. It's not even my favorite movie. I'm just saying this because it gets a bad rep. Eat, Pray, Love was nice. There's a lot of food scenes in there. Dead Poet Society, bro.
We love that. We love that. I say we because this, I think, movie was recommended before and we watched it. We loved it.
It
For
was good,
anybody who
right?
hasn't watched it, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. All
It
right.
really is, yeah.
And then our last, but definitely not the least, question, I would say, what are your thoughts about art?
Wow. That's such a good question because I feel like recently with school piling up and work piling up, I've been neglecting it. I used to, create like crazy growing up. I wanted to actually be a full-time artist, which is, interesting. Seeing that I decided to go with IT. But I think everyone should have a hobby that is linked to creating. And art is the output for when you create. So when you decide to create, the output is art, whatever you come up with. I think that no matter who you are, what your background is, what you do for a living, find one weekday, one weekend, whatever works for you, 1 hour, 15 minutes a week, just create something, create art, because it's just such a beautiful, form of expression. And it's very much tied to the human experience. I think it's, it's incredible. I sound like such a loser saying that, but art is
No, you're
incredible.
fine. It is
I
very hard
appreciate
to
you.
express art because
Yeah.
art is itself is very expressive. So I think,
Yes. It's
you
hard to
said it from,
define it.
yeah, definitely. All right, Hanieh, thank you so much for joining eTalks. I want to tell our viewers that we will be linking your Instagram and your Honey and Butter, my favorite name, your website on the description below so they can check it out for very, very nice and cool recipes.
I
Any
appreciate
last
that.
words? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I just want our viewers and listeners to know to just, get out there and cook. Just cook something right now. Fry an egg. I don't care. Garnish it. Make it look pretty. Enjoy it. Smell it. Love it. Eat it. Repeat it. Have fun with it. It's a form of expression. Just do it. Have fun with it.
That's a very nice message. And can we take a last look at the tofu before we leave?
I couldn't open the jar.
It's okay.
Okay, let me tell you what I was going to pair it up with. So you could do this in a bunch of ways. One was going to be with white rice, so steamed white rice, and with the tofu scramble. Actually, I can assemble it in less than 5 minutes for us right now. So let's do the rice. That just goes in here, make it pretty. And then I'm going to do our tofu scramble. Oh, God.
We should do e-talks in person from now on, because if we're going to have a chef on the show, we want to be able to eat
fair.
it.
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe what I made tastes like garbage and you wouldn't know unless you could taste it. And then we're doing that ripe, beautiful green avocado that you guys saw. And then I pickled some zucchini. So you got to be flexible with your ingredients. I usually do cucumber. Didn't have cucumber. So we pickled some zucchini, quick pickle. And then
is it also cool tempered? Cool tempered?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Learning it.
You're learning to use it. Exactly. And then garnish with green onions. So this is super messy. And more avocados, please. Okay. And I don't want to fold it too much because it'll all go over my laptop. But yay, it's beautiful. And another way you could eat this, I baked some sourdough focaccia this morning. So for whoever doesn't know what focaccia is, it's this wonderful like Italian bread. Super, oh, I got green onion on my finger. But yeah, that's what that is. And you could kind of put this tofu scramble. It's super versatile. So you can also make a little sandwich with it. I'm going to do that in like a minute. You'll see how quick it is. You just open it up. Look at these bubbles, you guys. How could I not obsess over it?
That looks beautiful and delicious.
Thank you. Thank you. And then you do a sauce. I love a good Kewpie mayo. If you feel like mayo is not for you, try Kewpie mayo. It's more like acidic. So we just sauce her up. And then you can do your tofu. So let's put her on here. And then some sort of like green because health. So you could do arugula, which is what I have, or basil.
Welcome to E-Recipes.
Yes. Can we make that happen, please? And then I just love avocado, so I put it in everything. And then also some pickles. I do pickled onions. And then
I see the comments saying they want to eat it, but at least we have the recipe.
So you can't wait. Can you see it? There it is.
Yes, we can.
My laptop. Yay! But there we go. It's super messy.
Looks delicious. Thank you, Hanieh, for cooking on the show. I think this was like a first of everything today. And thank you so much to our viewers for joining us. We will see you next week with another great episode. Bye, guys.